Hey everyone, welcome back to the Beginning Again retreat. And Kathy's going to help us move forward. So Kathy, take it away.
Thank you, Denise, and thank you, Denise, Maureen, and everyone for your flexibility. So today I'm talking about moving forward, which is not the same as getting over. When we talked earlier about language, I just want to make clear that that's not the direction we're going. I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. Hopefully. There we go. So I'm a former family caregiver for my mother who had dementia and for a friend who had motor neuron disease. And so one of the things I've been thinking about a lot in terms of grief is that my friend died almost 5 years ago, and still there's so much swirling around in my head about everything, about the whole experience, about caregiving, about grief, about everything. And I realized that that there are things I'd forgotten I'd enjoyed before caregiving both my mom and him. I think a lot about the time I spent with my caree and how to honor that, the insights that I've learned from grieving, and I just keep trying to create order of all these experiences. So as some of you may know, one of my day job is working with spreadsheets, and of course that's the direction we're going in. So basically, when we think about, all these things that have happened to us, we think about the before caregiving, the during caregiving, and the post caregiving parts. And the central part of that is you and your experience. So what I'm going to offer today is a method for integrating your experiences from those three phases of your life. And it may be overwhelming to look at those experiences all at once. If someone said to you, what did you learn from caregiving? What did you learn from your loss? It's really hard to bring the salient points out and discuss them. But instead, I'm going to offer you a technique for looking at one moment in time at a time and using each moment as a building block to integrating your experiences and moving forward. So the tools that we'll use are a chart, which I can show you here, but I'll just invite you right now to create, going the right direction, to create your own chart on a piece of paper that you might have. And just basically, we're looking at 4 columns. One is before caregiving, one is during caregiving, one is after caregiving, and one is moving forward. And we're going to do a few visualization exercises, which I will demonstrate for you today. And basically, the way I envision this is that I actually have been using this technique, and I have used a series of these visualization exercises to gather data. Again, it's my finance side showing, to gather data to see exactly, what is important to me as I move forward. So again, I'll demonstrate how to do these exercises, and then you can continue to do them on your own if this is a technique that you find useful. So here's the chart I use, but I will lead you through this as we do the exercises. Sorry, I'm having trouble, obviously still having technical difficulties. All right, so we're going to start. I'm going to start by inviting you to think of your time before you were a caregiver. For some of you, that may be a long time ago. I realized for me, actually, before I started caregiving for my mom, it was actually about 22 years ago. So we know that's a long way back, and we know a lot of things change over time as we change, as situations change, etc. But I'm just going to ask you to join with me for a minute and sit in your chair comfortably. And close your eyes, hold your hands out in front of you, and think of a day before caregiving that was a good day from your life. What were you doing on that day? Who were you with? What was important to you? What were your dreams and goals? How would you describe you? So think of that day. Think of what you were doing, who you were with. How did it feel? How did it sound? How did it smell? What were you hearing? What was great about that day? When you have that memory, I invite you to bring your hands to your heart, breathe that memory in, and then take a minute and write down the salient salient words, whatever comes to mind from that memory. Again, what were you doing? What were your activities and interests? Who were you with? What was important to you? What were your dreams? What were your goals? What were you like? So I'll give you a second to do that. I can't see all of you, so I hope you're ready. And then when you're ready, we'll move on to the during caregiving part. Again, I invite you to sit comfortably. Bring your hands out in front of you to receive the memory. Close your eyes. And think of a day or a moment during caregiving when you felt really good about what was going on, when you felt competent, when you felt relaxed, when you felt like everything went well that day, or you had some amazing experience with your caree that really made you feel like you were making a difference, you were doing the right thing, everything was going really well. When you have that memory, I invite you to bring your hands into your heart. Breathe that memory in. And again, take a minute and just jot down words that would describe how you felt on that day. What were you doing on that day? Who were you with? Was it just you and your caree? Was it someone else? What was important to you? What were your dreams and goals? How would you describe you? What were you like on that day? I'll just let you take a minute and write that down. It only has to be a few words. You'll see where we're going with this in a second. And then if you're ready, I invite you to join me again for an after caregiving memory. So I invite you again to close your eyes, get comfortable, and hold your hands out in front of you. Visualize a good day from your life after caregiving. It can be any time after caregiving ended. It can be whenever was a day that you felt good, you felt comfortable, peaceful, happy even, content. When you have that memory, I invite you to bring your hands into your heart and breathe that memory in. And take a minute and jot down a few words. Again, what were you doing on that day? Who were you with? What was important to you? What were your dreams and goals? How would you describe you? I'll give you a minute to do that. So if you've written your words down on a piece of paper, I'm curious, and Denise, I unfortunately am not seeing the chat, so if you wouldn't mind if anyone posts in the chat, that would be great. Are some of the items a surprise to you? What seems important to you as you move forward? Are there things that you see that you want to reintegrate into your life right now? And so I've asked you to make a moving forward column on the paper. And so what I ask you to do now is when you see things that you do want to move forward, move them into the moving forward column. And you, as I said, you can repeat this exercise on your own, because what we're looking at right now is basically the 3 memories that have come to you today in this moment. If you do this over and over, you will have a catalog of memories that will come to you and a whole lot of different experiences and different information. So I'll share mine with you. And if there's anything you'd like to post about what you have discovered or written in the chat room, I'd love to hear it. But let me just show you, I'll just show you what I did as an example. So basically, what I was thinking about in terms of my before caregiving was going to a Red Sox game with my family. And my activities or interests were baseball, car trip, crocheting, because any chance I could, I crocheted on the, not during the game, but on the way in the car on the way back, eating out, walking around Boston and having fun. And what I wanted was to have more adventures, adequate means, and use time well. my goal overall at that time was that I was a school administrator. I wanted a better job as a school administrator. It's not really relevant to the memory, but I put it in there for a reason. And the relationship I was in was with my family. And I think what I think I was fun, creative, and adventurous. During caregiving, what came up for me was a day that I spent with my Carrie that was just a lovely day that we spent, basically, where I cooked for him. We watched movies. We had great conversation. I ran some errands. We watched baseball, not the Red Sox, I have to say, but that's okay. And I spent a lot of time trying to facilitate his independence in his home, trying to figure out solutions for roadblocks he was having. And so my dreams were more days like that, to be useful and to make time stand still and to have more days like that. And that's when I started to shift, actually, from wanting to be a school administrator to doing caregiver support. And so my relationships at that point were with a friend, and the traits were feeling in control, organized, and meaningful. My after caregiving memory was going to the park, because I've developed this wonderful habit, I think, of going to a local park whenever I'm like feeling griefy or upset, or just really want some comfort from nature. And I go there and I read, and I'm outside. And sometimes if I sit in my car, I listen to music while I read outside. I usually have an iced coffee. Sometimes I crochet. And I usually do some movement either at the park, if it's walking or whatever, or before I get there. So I'm limber enough to do that. And then my dreams and goals are peacefulness, helping others, and trying to relearn the pace of life. And, what has come out of the grieving period for me is doing grief support. Relationships are with family and friends, and the traits are seeking comfort, being empathetic, and looking for meaning. So then when I look at my moving forward column, the things that I don't want to forget that were part of my life as I move forward are the baseball connection, watching movies, which I like to do to really to maintain a connection with my Carrie, who has since passed, which, as Denise was talking about, there are lots of ways to maintain connections. Reading, being outside, conversation, crocheting, and movement. My dreams and goals, again, to be useful, peaceful, and use the time well. And now my work is centered around caregiver and grief support and facilitating accessibility for people who need that. Relationships are family and friends, and the traits that I hope that I'm embodying are empathy, comfort, meaning, being organized, and being creative. So for me, having a spreadsheet is the most useful way to use this information. May not be for everybody. Actually, I want to show you something else first. So basically, having done this a number of times, I'll just show you that the way it sort of breaks down for me is that, if I think about the things that I did before caregiving, and this list is kind of culled from many different memories I've managed to come up with. There are a number of activities you'll see in my before caregiving column. What I find so interesting, and I've color coded them also so you can sort of follow like where they came into the mix. What I find so interesting, and of course it doesn't surprise anybody, that during caregiving, some of those activities fell off. There wasn't so much crocheting, there wasn't so much walking, there wasn't so much reading, but other things came on, such as watching movies, doing chair yoga and Tai Chi, and visiting museums, which I used to do as a stress reliever on days when I was providing care. I would try to fit in a museum visit to both for my comfort and also to bring some of that art back to my friend. After caregiving, you can see that a lot more things fell off, because we all know what it's like when you're grieving. I mean, you just really, all your interests change and you lose interest in a lot of things. But still, some things were added, the pink things. I learned to do grief movement. I listened to podcasts, those sorts of things to help me through. And then moving forward, I've been realizing lately there are a whole bunch of things I used to do a long time ago that I never do anymore, like cooking, crocheting, walking, reading, traveling for pleasure. I want to maintain watching movies for the connection with my caree. I want to maintain listening to podcasts, which I started doing when I was grieving because that's important to me. And in addition, I've added some new things that I want to learn, which is basically learning more about chair yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi, grief movement, that whole body of movement, and also learning to play guitar because my caree did, and I want to carry on that tradition. Just looking briefly at the goals and dreams, you can see how my career changed as I became more involved in caregiving and was grieving, etc. And we moved down the page. Still having trouble with up and down, sorry. Relationships, relationships with family and friends. I still have those. I have to say that some of the friends changed. I didn't put their names here because I knew this was a public spreadsheet, but when you do yours, you might just want to note, before caregiving, I used to see Sue a lot. I don't see Sue anymore. Maybe I want to try to see Sue more often, but during caregiving, I saw, Frank, and that he's a really valuable part of my life now too. But you can sort of see how during caregiving, other people were added into my memories, such as friends and relatives of carees and other caregivers and medical professionals who I'm no longer in contact with because they were the professionals for the carees. After caregiving, you develop a community of other grievers. And moving forward, I'm starting to reach out to my neighbors and also reach back to the business community that I had contacts with years ago and that had faded away. And traits, there you can see that, the traits I brought forward were things that really I learned through caregiving and after caregiving that were important to me. So going back to ways to use this information, I've chosen spreadsheet because that's my favorite mode of keeping data. You may choose a journal. One thing about either spreadsheet or journal is that basically all your information can be closed and put away. And if you want information that I think you want to refer to on a regular basis, you might want it more in front of you. So for example, you may want to write the things that are important to you on index cards that you want to move forward with on index cards and put them around your house. So you remember, oh, I want to remember to watch movies. That's important to me. I want to remember to walk. I want to remember to, call my friends, or I want to remember to, listen to a podcast or whatever. And you can also, if you're a visual person, consider a vision board. And I know you'll all laugh when you see this because it really, go through this. It really shows the fact that I do visualize things in little square boxes. But here's an example of a vision board you could create that I created, I think on Canva, using images on Canva. And it shows baseball, movies, reading, being outside, conversation, crocheting, movement, and playing guitar. And so if you're a visual person, having the vision board nearby can help you to remember that those are the things you want to emphasize in your life. And so that's all I have. I'm wondering if there's anything that any of you would like to share about anything you've brought forward or any thoughts you have about this process, or whether it be useful to you.
Kathy, I wonder if you could go back to the spreadsheet you created, which is basically the template.
I could go back to the template. Well, we hope I can, Denise. Very good. Someday I'm going to have a technical consultant with me every time I do a presentation. So here, here's the template.
I think the categories are so interesting to me: activities, goals, dreams, relationships, traits. And I'm not sure I would add any different ones. I guess perhaps maybe the emotions that come up during those activities or goals or relationships or traits. I wonder if sometimes if we think about why we like a certain particular activity, it could be because of the emotion we feel during that activity.
That's a really good point. And I think if people do want to use the spreadsheet, which I'll send you a PDF of if you want to send that out as well to the attendees, you should feel free to add whatever categories that are meaningful to you in terms of, what you experienced or what you want to bring forward.
I also thought it was very powerful when you talked about your career goals changing, and how it's interesting that it seemed like there was a particular day you had with your friend that really inspired you to think about, this day is my career.
Well, yeah, I think that is true. Day or days, because I wasn't there all the time, and other people were providing care, and other people, we all did it differently, and we were all just feeling it out as we went along. He eventually did hire professional care, but not for a while. And so, it really became clear to me that, I was fortunate that I found you, for example, and, could learn the things that I learned about the caregiving experience, but other people didn't really have access to that and didn't know how to access it. So I think that's when I really became aware that it's very hard to be a caregiver without support and without knowledge.
So what I also think is interesting about this is we think sometimes, and we talked about this earlier, actually, this idea that we put so much on hold during our caregiving experience, which makes it feel like sometimes the experience can be about sacrifices. And what you've inspired us to do is not think about what's on hold, but what's part of that experience. And if we also think about our traits, what we're good at during caregiving, we can think about how does that then inform what our life after caregiving is. Advocating during a caregiving experience is one of the skills that we actually, not only, we've already had that, I believe, in our life, but it heightens that skill. It expands it, it broadens it, it makes it more passionate for us to be an advocate. Maureen talked about that in her presentation. She now advocates for better care in long-term care facilities, for better support for family caregivers. That's because of caregiving. So you've really helped us pivot from, okay, what's been on hold to what have I been developing during caregiving? And if we think about it as not necessarily what's been on hold, but maybe what's been simmering underground that we haven't actually tapped into, that we can tap into now after caregiving with time to reflect.
I like that perspective. That's beautiful. Simmering underground. Because there's really so many skills, as you know, that you learn when you're a family caregiver, or that you develop, that really come into play. Even after caregiving, when you're grieving, there's so many skills, so many things, realizations we have, as we've heard today.
I think that the caregiving experience and what we have in terms of this meaningful, powerful experience is why we think about work in a different way after caregiving ends. Because we want something just as meaningful and profound after caregiving, which is why we might look for a different kind of work. And I use the word work loosely because we can work as a volunteer, we can work as a small business owner, we can work as an employee. It's just how we look at work and how we show up at work, and our focus on work, I think, is transformed because of our caregiving experience.
I completely agree with that, Denise. I know I felt that transformation in myself, where I was, happy with my job and looking for a promotion within my job, and then suddenly went not meaningful enough.
See, I think that's so interesting. You had this goal, you knew what you wanted at that moment in your life before caregiving, and then what you realized the true dream came up during caregiving.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm glad, Penny, that thinking about it's not on hold, but it's simmering is helpful to you, because I'm going to think a little bit more about that. Because I know that oftentimes we do talk a lot about what's on hold. And I myself have felt like there have been things on hold for me during caregiving. And I've been challenging myself around that thought just within the past couple days. Because I feel better if I think, oh, it's just been simmering. It hasn't been on hold. Something else has been simmering. Maybe something did go on hold, but something else has been simmering. And that makes me feel better.
Something
That-
took its place.
Yes, that there's been an exchange rather than a sacrifice. Okay, thank you, Kathy. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording for just a minute.